Hi, this is Hilly Reads. You can call me Hilly. Today I'm going to be doing my January wrap up. It's already February 2026. Can we believe it? Oh my god. So for January, I read 7 books, which is pretty good. What's really good about it is not the number, but that I had some really good solid ratings for this month. Everything was 4 or above, and I had, I believe, 1 5-star. So we'll talk through everything. We'll get to everything. I'll just jump right into it. The first book I read in the month of January 2026 was Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross. I read it on my Kindle. So Wild Reverence is a romantasy book. I don't read a lot of romantasy at all, but this one stood out to me because it's about gods, and it gives a Greek god sort of vibe, but there are different gods in the Greek gods. They have, similar things they're about, but they have different names and stuff. The main character is Matilda. She's a newer god, and her job is basically to be a messenger. So she carries, she can kind of go between the different realms, and carry messages for the gods primarily. There's the mortal realm, and the gods themselves are separated into 2 separate groups. They have the Skywards and the Underlings, or they're not underlings. Whatever. They're underground, and they're the ones in the sky. So there's a whole, it's like I said, it's a little bit Greek god-y, but it has its own kind of god lore to it as well. That I thought was really interesting and really fun. So she's this messenger god. She starts showing up in the dreams of this mortal human boy named Vincent. And she is able to see their dreams together through this other goddess who is the goddess of dreams. And that's kind of how their friendship as kids starts, is just her randomly showing up in his dreams, kind of like a dream version of herself. But they become friends kind of from that, and then keeps praying to her and stuff. And then later in life, he's a lord, and she shows up with a letter for him, and then it kind of goes from there. So that's a really general synopsis. A ton of stuff happens in this book. A lot of stuff happens. It's a really big journey. It starts when they're kids. It'll skip forward some years. Some other stuff will happen. It'll skip forward some other years. Some other stuff will happen. It's a really long journey. I really kind of read this one very slowly. I was reading it over a trip, and so it really felt like I would go do a bunch of trip stuff. I had a little bit of time in the evenings. I would read a little bit, and one thing would happen, and then the next day the same thing and the same thing and the same thing. So just a bunch of stuff happens. So it kind of made the book feel long for me because I took so long to read it. And I felt like every time I read it, a bunch of stuff was happening though, so it didn't feel, it felt eventful. And I really like Matilda in particular. Like I said, I'm not a big romantasy reader, and I thought the romance of this was fine. I don't feel strongly about Vincent. I love Matilda, and I love, there's this god of war, Bade, who is kind of a father figure to her. Those are 2 characters that really stood out to me. And yeah, the romance is fine. It's not bad. I just don't feel super, super strongly about it. I don't read a lot of straight romance. I'm not super interested in it generally. I would super recommend it. If you want a different kind of romantasy, I think this would be good. Again, I haven't read a lot of other romantasy, but this one sounded different to me, and that's what made it interesting. And I rated it a 4. Next is Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. This is a book I did as an audiobook. I usually do thrillers as an audiobook. I wish I never save posts of people recommending stuff. I just see it once and then mark it on Goodreads, or put in a hold on Libby for thriller books. Somebody said this was a good one, and it was. I think this is one of the best thrillers I've read in a while. Mostly because the premise of it is so interesting. So it's about this woman who she like has a pretty normal day, and then at the end of it, her son stabs and kills somebody. And she is shocked by this, and from there, she travels backwards through time, presumably, not intentionally, this is just happening to her, but presumably with the goal of stopping her son from killing somebody. And so it goes back in time. It's like she experiences the day it happens. You'll see the day before it. You'll see the day before that, the day before that, and then it kind of skips a little bit further back too, which I thought was really interesting. So she's constantly struggling with this this thing of anything she does on a day can't have an impact to the next day because she just keeps moving backwards in time. There is no tomorrow for her. It's always yesterday or 2 weeks ago or whatever. So anything she can get done in a day, she has to get done in that day. And every day she's in, she has to like figure out what is important about that day. It's interesting. That keeps the pacing up really well. There was a couple of twists in it that I thought were really good. Payoff wise, I really enjoyed it. I thought it all came together really well in the end. I liked the family stuff in this. I think this main character is interesting. I like these kind of, I am not a person who ever wants to be a mother, and so it's interesting to me, these characters who kind of aren't like the perfect mom, and kind of struggle with that, and they feel guilty all the time for not being the perfect mother. And so I really enjoyed her character arc with that, and with her son in particular. And I really like her and her husband in this one. I think a lot of thrillers are like domestic thrillers where like it's a husband and wife who just hate each other. And I think that's so boring. I'm so tired of that just always being the thing. I think it's boring, and I think we need to do something else. My God. But these two have banter. They get along. They're still like have a connection clearly after being married for a really long time. And I thought, especially at the beginning of the book, that really kind of got me hooked in it, because I'm not just invested in this one person. I am invested in her life. I want her to be able to keep her life the way it is. I want her to keep her husband and her kid and keep them all safe. And I thought this was a really interesting premise. I think this author, Gillian McAllister, has some other thrillers that kind of have a little bit of a different premise to them. I'm not remembering any off the top of my head right now, but I think I'm going to read another by this author because I really like this one. I think what I am discovering about myself as I read more thrillers is I do need something that's, like I said, I'm pretty bored with like a domestic thriller, I hate my wife and cheated on her sort of story. I think I need something else to be going on. And so this one was a win. I was really, really happy with that one. Next, so for Wrong Place, Wrong Time, my rating for it was a 4. But next is my 5-star of the month. I loved this book. This was Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison. Black Sheep is about this character, Vesper. She grew up in this religious community and kind of escaped it pretty much as soon as she could. And has, been living out on her own for a while since. But she all of a sudden one day gets a wedding invitation from her cousin / bestie. They grew up together basically and were really close. But once she left, they didn't speak anymore. Gets a wedding invitation from her and decides she's gonna go back for this wedding. And I can't really say more than that. This book is so good. So many things that were unexpected, but like, really executed really well. I thought the writing was really great. I think Vesper is not, the most sympathetic character in the world. She's also like a pretty, like, she's been through some shit, but she's also like generally like a pretty, like, unlikable person. Like, this is not a person I would, I would talk to in the real world, but, I think, it's well done. You get why she's like that, and it's also she's unlikable but still interesting to follow. And this background that she comes from is also super, super interesting, and to follow her getting back into it is an awesome experience. The horror in this, like towards the end of this book, there were like parts of reading it where I felt like ill. Like, it's not like, I don't know how to just, yeah, it's not like insanely like gory, splatter, punky sort of thing, or yeah, I can't say much more than that, but I felt like and I don't feel that way from books a lot. Even like, yeah, like super gory books. Like I just read, I read Blood on Her Tongue a little bit. I don't know, that's the first one that came to mind, but there's like some eating people and stuff in that sort of one. And that stuff doesn't super, super get me. This did. And I thought it was a great character arc for our main character. There's so many cool details in it. The people in her religious community, I think, they're not like the most in-depth characters ever, but they have interesting little details about them, or they're kind of like characters that have like details about them that are a little different than what you would expect. Her like mom is like this like horror movie actress who's like super, super famous. And it like really has this like kind of, she's kind of goth-ish sort of aesthetic. They're just really interesting. And I love this book. I really want to read more Rachel Harrison. The only thing I had read previously from this was in the short story collection. I thought I had it over there, but I don't. The short story collection they did for Aardvark a little bit ago. I read her short story, and I love that short story collection, but hers in there was my least favorite, so I kind of wasn't sure what to think about Rachel Harrison. Love this book. I'm gonna read more Rachel Harrison for sure. I thought this was so good. It was like definitively a 5-star. Sometimes I'll like upgrade something to a 5-star after thinking on it for a little bit. This was like a 5-star. Next, I have started doing this thing where I'm trying to read a short story a day, almost every day. And so I will like get a short story book and just kind of read one out of there every day and slowly pick away at it. I think it's been really, really rewarding, to just kind of have like a new short story every day, and maybe they're super short and it's 10 pages and you feel really accomplished for like knocking that out. And it also like gives you a moment to kind of, think about it and then come back the next day and read a new one. So the first one I did off the bat this year is Out There by Kate Folk. Kate Folk wrote Sky Daddy, which I have not read, and I also didn't know while I was reading this, and then kind of found out later. It's made me want to read Sky Daddy. I really enjoyed this short story collection. There are 15 stories in here, and then I averaged out my score for my rating for all of these stories, and it's a 3.83, which I normally wouldn't like do stars out to that much. I think I rounded up to a 4. Really, really enjoyed this. I'm not gonna like go through the synopsis for all the stories. There's 15 of them. I think it had a lot of interesting stuff about being a woman, about and kind of discussed it in not like an essay sort of way, but by using the story in a way that I thought was really well done. I thought a lot of these short stories had something to say and a good payoff for them. Like, it had both of those things, which I think is so hard to get both of those in a short story, and I think is really crucial for a short story to be good. So I think that's why short stories can be really hard. She like had an interesting concept for a lot of these. There are ones where like there's ones about this world where there are these things called blots, which are these like, they're like fake robot men basically, but are designed to kind of look like real men, and they date women and then at some point steal all their data and then disappear. And so it's like run by like, it's like a Russian scam or something like that. I think that's a really interesting concept. There were a few of those in there where it's like I could see this, like, that could be, like, a whole novel. That could be, like, a whole series, honestly, but, like, she took that and put it in a short story, and it left you wanting more just enough, where it felt like it was a satisfying payoff for a short story. You're really glad she did that, but you're like, I would read more of this. So that's, like, the perfect place to be in. The lowest rated of these was a 3. I didn't have any of the stories rated lower than a 3. And I had 2 5s, I believe. Kind of my only critique, you know, some of them just don't hit for you in the way that it's, you know, it's always going to happen. I think maybe one of my biggest critiques is a couple of them kind of had an anticlimax. I think that's also, unfortunately, really big for short stories, where it'll just kind of end at some point. But most of these had a good ending, but a few of the ones I didn't like felt like it was building to something and then just kind of ended. My other thing is a lot of these stories deal with body stuff in different ways. And I felt like the body horror of it, some of these are, like, pretty horrifying. One of these is about, like, a disease in which every night your bones just, like, melt. And then in the morning they, like, reconstitute. And that's, like, that's really horrifying. That it can really, really lean into the body horror there. And I felt like it wasn't pushed far enough. I think with an idea like that, you have to push it really far with that. Because some really crazy stuff could happen for that. And there's a little bit of it. But even when, like, a body horror kind of moment happens, I don't think her descriptions of it are strong enough for it to feel... It's like a Black Sheep, that moment I talked about, where there's a moment in it where I feel ill reading it. I feel sick. And there's no point anywhere in this that I get even close to that. And like I said, that's really hard for me, but I wanted to be closer to that end of the spectrum of, like, this is really freaking disgusting. And it just doesn't push that far. I think, you know, you don't have to do that. You don't even have to do that with a story about body stuff, but a premise, especially like that one with, like, the bones melting, that feels like that's, you have to, almost. Otherwise, how could that not be a disappointment, to not really go far with the body horror and something that horrible? But yeah, that's just, like, that's something maybe pretty specific to me, and maybe in general you might feel like some of these didn't push far enough. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good start for the short story thing, and kind of kept me wanting to do this. So, the next book I read was Flagrant Foul by Jessie H. Rain. This is a gay hockey romance. I read a lot of gay hockey romance. This is the first one I read this year. I've also read 2 other by Jessie H. Rain, which are Poetry on Ice and The Legend Next Door. These are all, like, in the same series, but in a way that a lot of romance ones are, where, like, you really, really, for these, do not have to have read the other ones in the series. Some of the characters, like, the main couple from the other ones, one of the other ones shows up in this book for, like, 2 seconds. It's, like, it's not important that you have the context of the broader world in it. But I'll get into the synopsis of this one. So, Flagrant Foul is about Teddy and Sev. And this is like a brother's best friend sort of one. So, Teddy is the younger brother of, I believe his name is Ryan. And Ryan and Sev have been best friends since they were like teenagers. They're like 15 or something like that. And Teddy, as a kid, always super, super looked up to his brother, and always super, super looked up to Sev. And then Sev was kind of his, like, gay awakening, but nothing ever happened between them when they were younger. But he was always kind of attracted to Sev. And they're older now. They play on the same hockey team they have for a little while. It's unclear how long. And Teddy has always been super into Sev, and has now decided, basically, I'm gonna seduce this guy. I'm gonna make it happen. They've had, like, moments in the past where Sev kind of turned him down, and Teddy is like, but I think he does like me, and I'm gonna go for it. And Jessie H. Rain will really write a boy who's obsessed. They are obsessed with each other. I love how she writes characters that are really obsessed with each other. They feel very deeply and very strongly, and they're going to be dramatic, and they're going to be a little bit toxic, but not too toxic. Like, Sev's going to be pretty jealous at some points, but not, like, cross any lines in a way that, like, make me upset. So I think the balance of it is really good, and not that there's some drama. Especially in, like, this one, there's not a lot of, so, like, for me, in a romance, I love when there's, like, a plot to it as well. There's, like, something else external going on. Or the alternative of that is that our main characters are a little bit dramatic, a little bit messy, and maybe a little bit you feel like you're making your own problems a little bit. And these characters this book in general falls into that latter one where, like, these characters are messy, and it's important that you understand for that to have impact and not just feel really stupid, where they're coming from and their past and, like, things that might have led them to kind of be that way. And I think this does that well enough. And I like Sev and Teddy together. It's, like, main criteria for romance. The climax to this one I didn't feel like was that great, though. Like, there was a lot of drama building up to it, and then it doesn't super hit it at the end. But it's okay. It was still, like, towards the climax was still, like, feel good enough, because I really want them to be together at that point, that it was still, like, enjoyable. And what else? I debated whether I was going to get into this at all, but I usually don't talk about this too much in hockey books because I usually let it kind of roll off my back. But I know about hockey, and some of the hockey stuff in this book was pretty janky. I know there are people, like, on Twitter who, like, love pointing this out about hockey books is, like, all these things that are improbable. They'll take, like, heated rivalry and be like, a rookie's not gonna score however many goals Ilya Rozanov scored in a season, like 70 or something. It's literally happened, like, once ever. They're like, Ilya and Shane are gonna both score 70 goals in their rookie season. That I don't care about. This was noticeable to me. In a couple places, some of the lingo is just, like, wrong. There's, like, some soccer lingo that's kind of in there that just would never be used. Teddy is a goalie, which, love a goalie. He has a little bit of goalie quirk to him, but in a game, in one of the only, like, hockey play sort of moments in the book, they're during a game, this guy on the opposing team has a breakaway and is coming towards him with the puck, and Teddy just, like, storms out of his net and, like, basically, like, almost tackles him. He, like, throws him up into the air. He, like, gets airborne or whatever, and that's how he stops the goal. Recently, something kind of similar happened where, like, Charlie Lindgren kind of, like, hit Steven Stamkos with his stick, like, in the nuts, basically, and he's, like, flying up in the air, but that was personally funny. But really like this book. I rated it a 4. Biggest kind of gripes are, you know, not super having a bunch of other plot, and as characters, I like Teddy and Sev, and like I said, you get a little bit of where they're coming from and stuff, but they're not the most in-depth characters. Teddy, in particular, starts the book one way, and, like, once he decides what he's gonna do and, like, seduce Sev, his personality, like, really changes. In a way that is, like, it has a reason for it, and it makes sense, but he feels so night and day different that it's a little bit jarring. And then Sev, by his very nature, is, like, not a very decisive person, and so it's, like, hard to grasp, like, what's going on in his head. It's a dual POV, but he has a lot less chapters from his point of view, and even when he does, he doesn't think as deep, I think. He's just that kind of person, which is valid. That is a type of person, but it's just, like, a little bit less interesting to read about sometimes, like, a person who doesn't feel super well defined because they don't even really know how to define themselves. But yeah, I still like them, and like I said, writes the obsession between them really, really good. The back and forth's really good. I like how Jessie H. Reid generally. I like how she writes steamy scenes. I think they're good, and it's a really solid one. I don't know if she's planning on putting out more of these, but if she does, I'll definitely keep reading them for sure. There's, like, no way I would pass up reading another one of these. This next one, I actually have a physical book. All my other ones were either on Kindle audiobook or they're library books that I returned. I'm good about returning my library books, you guys. So next is Dry Water. I read this because of a video I will release in a little bit, where I let my TBR jar kind of decide my fate. As you can see, I have like all these little books in here. They're like mostly all books that I own. And I am doing a video where whatever I pick out of the jar is what I read. The first one I picked was one of the most random books on my bookshelf, which is Dry Water by Eric Nylund. I bought this book because I was looking in the bookstore for the Halo book that Eric Nylund wrote, which I think is Ghosts of Onyx, and I have read since, but I did not find that book in the bookstore. I found this book, I read the synopsis, and I thought it seemed interesting. And I think I was going to keep this on my bookshelf for a really long time and not read it, though, because it was such a random pickup. I didn't really have another reason to read this. So I'll give a brief thing of my thoughts, the synopsis of my thoughts here, but, like, check out that TBR jar video if you kind of want to hear more about this, because I would recommend this, and it is not a, like, it doesn't seem to be a really popular book. It's from 1997. On Goodreads, it has, like, 300 reviews or something like that. So an underground pick, but I rated it a 4.5. I loved this book. So this book is about Larry, who is a writer and also kind of psychic. Mostly he can see the future a little bit. Mostly he'll see how people are gonna die. Like, he'll touch somebody and he knows how they're gonna die. And he kind of picks up and leaves his life to go to this town called Dry Water, which is supposed to be like a writer artist haven. He just wants something different in his life. But a necromancer specifically sees him coming and thinks that Larry is someone he needs to stop. He is gonna find the Dry Water, and that is a bad thing, which is just this magical water that at first we don't really know what it's gonna do. So Necromancer thinks he needs to stop him. There's also another witch who also learns of Larry's existence, and she wants the water for her own purposes, so she's also gonna try to stop Larry. And I just thought this was so good, because the thing that I liked the most about it is logically it made sense, but like so many times the things that were happening were not what I expected. Really kept me on my toes. The pacing of it was so great, but like things that were happening along the way, I understood why the characters were making the decisions they did, but like the way they had to go about getting a thing or doing a thing was different than like what I would have guessed. And that was really fun to read. The tone of this is very much like fun but not like funny. It's not funny. There's not really a lot of humor to it. It's not goofy. It's not silly. It's like pretty, I don't know, almost kind of straightforward, in tone at least. But it's just fun to read. I think this author is really creative and came up with a lot of cool ideas for this, and it was just cool to read that. Didn't feel super strongly about the characters, which is like my biggest knock on it, but like enjoyed it. So super fun, super unexpected read. Had pretty low expectations going in and really enjoyed it. So maybe give this a try if you just want like a cool, fun, standalone fantasy sort of book. I'd recommend it for sure. Okay, last book of the month is Into the Riverlands by Nghi. So you can see this book is super tiny. It's 100 pages, like exactly. It is part of the Singing Hills cycle, which I have been reading lately. It's the third one. These books follow this cleric named Nghi, and they're like a cleric monk sort of person, but they come from this abbey that specifically wants to it collects people's stories, it collects history. They're not super religious, they just kind of like document stories. And each book follows Nghi as they're in a different place with different people and hear stories from people. The whole series has like really they're stories about stories, which I think is really great and really fun. This one, out of the 3 I've read so far, is the one I like the least, but that's still like a very good place to be. Like, I still really like it a lot. It's still, I think it's still a 4. Yeah, it's still a 4 for me. It's the worst of a great lot, so, you know. In this one, she meets a few people that they're gonna go on a journey, and they're in the Riverlands. The Riverlands are kind of this place where there's like a lot of bandits and stuff. It talks a lot about like these heroes who are really gifted in martial arts. So there's like a lot of like random little fighting going on there. And she travels with a couple of young women and this couple, and it's kind of gets their stories from them as they're going. This had, I think the acknowledgements of this one start with the author being like, part of what I was thinking about for this is how you can never really know all of someone. Even as long as you know them, you'll never know everything about them. You'll never know all of them. And that's sad in a way. But it's also cool. It's also cool that you can know someone for such a long time and then discover this new thing that you never would have guessed about them. And so that's part of the stories in here is some of the people she is traveling with. They know some stuff about them, but they'll never ever know everything, and some stuff that, you know, that person doesn't want to tell them. So I like that. I also like one of the other things discussed in here that I thought was really interesting was Sang, who was one of the girls that she is traveling with, talks about how she really likes stories about ugly women because, and she backs this up of, most stories about women are about beautiful women, and the other ones are about ugly women. And kind of saying in that why the hell does it even matter what these women look like in their stories? Why are there no stories just about women? They have to be beautiful women, or it has to stand out that they're ugly, and the rare exceptions to that. So I like that. And I wish there were just stories about women sometimes. A lot of this is like, deals with why do certain people interpret certain stories in different ways? Why do they tell stories differently? What is their truth and what is something that's important to them? So why is it important to seemingly everyone what women look like? And why it's important to saying that ugly women's stories. Why is it important to other people that in these stories they're telling another story that's supposed to be about you know, this kind of cauldron roof person kind of gaining empathy basically for other people? Why in that story does he have to gain empathy for a woman who is beautiful? Why is it so important that she is beautiful in that story? So I just think it's a really interesting discussion. I'm gonna definitely keep reading these. I literally finished this at like 11:50 on January 31st, so like got it right in before the deadline. But that was the last book of this month. This is my January 2026 wrap off. Super great month. I'm super excited for this year. This is such a good start to the year. I hope I keep up this momentum. What else do I take away from this? If you heard this and you think, in particular, there is a thriller, if you want to recommend me anything, absolutely recommend me something in the comments, please. But if there's a thriller you think I would like, please do that. I'm constantly searching for a thriller I would like, and constantly running into dead ends with that. So if you think there's one I'd like, definitely recommend it to me. What did you read this month? What are your goals for this reading year? Was there anything you DNF'd this month? I didn't have anything I DNF'd this month. I'm gonna try to bring those up in wrap-ups too. But, yeah, did you DNF anything? Did you finish anything? What are you reading right now? Like, comment, and subscribe. And this is Hilly Reads. You can call me Hilly. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you hopefully soon with the, TBR jar video, so watch out for that.